Tonight on Crossing the River, our team investigates a restaurant in a small Ontario town nestled along the shores of Chemong Lake. For decades now, stories of phantom parties and tables occupied by unseen guests have baffled and intrigued various owners and visitors alike.
Hi, I'm Doug. Welcome to the Chemong Lodge.
Chemong Lodge was originally built in 1896, and its original purpose was to serve as a summer cottage for the Bulls, who were they were a wealthy family from New York, and it was its location right along the banks of Lake Chemong made it a really desirable summer getaway. So a lot of boating and socializing took place there, and at the lodge itself, in fact, there was a lot of parties that were held in the main room, which is now, I believe, the main dining room at Chemong Lodge. Over the years, a lot of families took ownership of the place, all pretty much wealthy families, the elite of their day. By 1918, the place was known as the Desbecker Estate. In 1962, the current owners took over, the Northey family, and they went about turning the place into a restaurant. And after 10 years of renovations and making some changes to the building, they opened their doors as a restaurant. And interestingly, the Chemong Lodge was actually the Chemong Lodge Tavern in 1974, which earned it the distinction of being the first tavern in the Smith and Ismore Lakefield area.
Chemong Lodge wasn't always just a restaurant, it was the Northey family home. We sat down with some of Doug's immediate family, who shared stories of their time living and working in the building, and how at times they experienced some inexplicable and shocking events.
First year we were here, it was in the summer, and Jane woke me up and there was somebody walking in the living room with a flashlight. So we were a little upset there, and then I came with the building, a New York Billies Club. So I got that in the boat, and by the time we got out there, the flashlight was flashing around that we could see coming up the hall. But then as soon as we got there, it quit. And we've had a lot of experiences.
There was one night where I was closing the restaurant with another worker and friend, and we were sitting in what used to be the bar and having a drink after work, and we're both sitting and we both heard it. But there's a baby crying from back towards the kitchen, and we both just kind of looked at each other, and she said, "Did you hear that?" And I said, "Yeah," and we just finished our drinks and left. I was walking and closing off the doors to one of the adjoining rooms, and I had a headband on, and something, or my headband was pulled right off the top of my head and dropped in behind me. So that was probably one of the most personal sort of experiences that I've had with whomever. I remember the night that Doug was closing. He probably told you this story.
I was in the office. We normally would do our cash off, and we'd do a nightly deposit before we would go home.
He came flying through my door, and he was just as white as a sheet.
And I was sitting in there, and I could hear some voices, and didn't pay much attention because, you know, there's usually people in here, but you get sitting there, and I was doing my thing, and I knew that everyone had left because they had said goodbye. So I'm listening, sitting there, and of course you can't really concentrate very well when you're counting money and kind of wondering what's going on. So I got up off the desk, walked towards the main dining room, and listened, stopped at the washrooms, and I listened. Certain enough, there was almost like a little party going on inside. I took one step into the main dining room, and it was just like whoosh. There was not a noise, not a sound. All it was just feeling up my back that was like cold. And so I turned around, I came to the office, took everything and wrapped it all up, and I bolted out that front door and ended up at Kathy's.
Honest to goodness, I've never seen him look so freaked out.
And that was really an experience that was second to none for me.
Doug says the ghosts of Chemong Lodge have pretty much become part of the family.
I think we all grew up with them. Yeah, from the time I was a year old when Dad purchased the place. We'd spend very little time alone here, but the times that we did spend alone, it was a pretty spooky place to be when you were young.
It was time for Doug to take us on a tour of Chemong Lodge. He filled us in on more of the history of the site and explained that simply talking with our team on the phone before we arrived for our investigation seemed to spark some unusual activity.
This is the men's room. And after I was talking to Cameron, the next morning I came in and both these were unlatched and hanging.
Really?
The Chemong Lodge was built in 1896. The fireplace was built in 1895. My father purchased it in 1962, June 12th, as a matter of fact, and we moved in. Yes, there are spirits here. We do believe. My mom and dad can vouch for that. I have two sisters, and we all have two kids, so they've all been in the building, and we've all had experiences with our spirits in here.
Great. Well, can you show us some of the hot spots, some of the areas where you're getting most of the activity?
I sure can. This room here, we all had a staff meeting in here, and Nola was sitting here, I was sitting here, and my dad was sitting there, and out of the blue we heard, "Hey Bob!" As plain as day. It's 9:15 in the morning and there's nobody in the building. We get up and we search the restaurant and there wasn't a soul here.
Is there anybody named Bob here?
Yes, my father's name is Bob.
Do you get the impression that there's more than one spirit here? Or?
There's definitely more than one spirit here. Okay. We do know or do believe that there's one main character, but Chemong Lodge throughout the years in history has had hosted so many guests and so many visitors, we believe that we may still have those guests visiting us. So this is our main dining room. This room here used to have a dance floor, piano, a little bar. So this is where people gathered. They always had people come up. They always let the local people of Chemong Park come and play with them here. So these rooms were always filled with people having fun. The Bridgenorth Cemetery is right behind us. Tombstones date back to 1863, and of course people are still being buried there today. So maybe we have some of our guests coming over from the graveyard. I'm not too sure. I'm hoping you'll find that out. So this is the back patio. This is where they played games. There was the wind-up xylophones, record players. It was all wicker. Everything was wicker in here, whether it be the music machines or the games tables, the rockers. Everything was all wicker, and this was where they played. We do have periodically tables being occupied, and guests will say this table's way too cold. And we have had little tests going, saying, you know what? Okay, the Desbeckers or whoever may be sitting there, let's try. We'll move them over here, and I'll have some friends come in and sit down. Geez, Doug, we can't sit here. We just can't sit here. So we believe that the table's occupied. We'll put a reserve sign on it and leave that alone. I had an electrician come in. Those lights would not turn on. They would not turn on. No way would they turn on. I had an electrician come in. I had power. Just, Doug, you're crazy. That's okay. We turn the lamps up, put more candles on the table, and let it ride for the night. The next morning, turn the lights on. No problem. Well, welcome to cabin 1. This is the smallest cabin of the lodge. We had 3 others, and this one had a little kitchenette, and a little bathroom in the closet, and a fold-out couch with a little tiny table and chair. It was pretty much a self-containing place for 2. This always kind of seemed to have something going on. whether it be our guests that were staying in the cabin or myself when I stayed in it. Many of guests have been in here, so this could be, like being one of the only cabins left, could be part of our ghosts in here. This is still the old part of the lodge, and then we built this on in 1989, our main kitchen. What's going on back here?
Not much. Justin thinks he saw something weird downstairs.
Ready?
He said he heard footsteps, and
It's a good night.
He left the laundry room light on, and he went in the washroom and came back and was off and went downstairs. So.
Perfect. Might be a good night for you after all. Right?
So mental note, leave the light on. See what happens.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's that?
Washrooms for you if you wish. The upstairs was a problem. Well, we can leave them on too if you want. Something kind of cool. As the old cellars go,
Wow.
that was outside. You can see that cement structure there. Yep. That was outside, so that was one of the crawl downs. Right now we have all our freezer units and stuff down there. This isn't necessarily the basement, sure. Okay. But it's kind of neat. This was all outside before we put the new kitchen on. Cool.
We decided to expand our investigation to include the nearby cemetery.
This piece of property my dad sold on me in 1979. So we had this lot as well, and they expanded the graveyard.
Have there been any accidents around here outside on the property? Automobile accidents?
Sure.
Anything like company? Like people might know?
I don't know. The history of Chemong Lodge, you still look around the group of people and you have disbelievers and believers and the in-betweeners. It's still really interesting to do it.
There are those who believe the souls of some of the people buried there could be visiting Chemong Lodge.
That's the only deal. Fair enough. That's all at that time.
I'm only really filming where you shine up.
Can you tell me where you want to shine?
Well, no, you just shine and I'll probably...
Okay.
Our Crossing the River team doesn't normally do investigations outside or in cemeteries, simply because at night there are so many potential sound and movement sources that are difficult to track down, making it even more difficult to separate what is normal from what is paranormal. We made an exception in this case because of Doug's reports that some psychics who have visited Chemong Lodge in the past felt there could be some spiritual migration between the 2 points.
Go to the wall.
Right back to the tree line there.
Okay.
And then it's owned by Irwin Toys, the
Yeah.
property across the way.
Now, apparently, you say there were some mediums in here
Yep.
who said that there could be some visitors from the cemetery into Chemong Lodge.
That's what she said, yeah.
Okay.
Whatever's possible, right?
Yeah. Oh, beautiful night. Very nice.
In 1615, Samuel de Champlain came through, and in the history books it's written that Samuel de Champlain met the Ojibwe Indian chief, and they came up Mud River, which Chemong, M-U-N-G, means mud in Ojibwe Indian, and he rested on the top of the hill, on the top of this huge gully. So on top of the huge gully sits Chemong Lodge. The floating bridge we've filled in. All the floating bridge was underneath our property. It was all excavated out of the lake, and it was buried where we walked across where the big building shack is. That was the original gully, and that went down 35, 40 feet straight down. And now it is there because we've kept on backfilling. So there's a wee bit of history for you. That dates back to 1615. Neat, eh?
Yeah.
Okay, what's going on?
We're getting weird interference with the cameras. We have one here and one over here. We're just testing the system. That's the first one. And this is the second one. And then all of a sudden we saw a third view, but it was upside down. We're like, what's going on? So we started walking around. It's right there in the corner. Cameron fixed it, turned it back up, but we're actually receiving a third camera on a 2-camera setup.
How normal is that?
I don't know.
Doug had said that the main room, the main dining area, was the hot spot or the hotbed of activity. So we decided to focus the majority of our equipment in that room. We had 5 cameras covering every possible angle in the main dining hall. Plus we had an extra one in the front porch and another one in the side porch because there's also claims of activity in those areas.
We're on our vigil. We're in the dining room of Chemong Lodge, and some pretty heavy vibes in here. So, do you want to do an EVP session?
Well, one of our cameras does have audio, but for the most part we rely on our digital audio recorders. These are devices that have replaced tape recorders. What we use them for is to do EVP work, which is electronic voice phenomenon. Now, what the nature of this is you record yourself speaking. It could be just you could have other people there, but generally only one person asks questions, and then you leave a bit of a pause for something or someone to answer. Now, what you find with an EVP is that you won't hear anything as you're doing the session, but when you play it back, sometimes you'll actually get responses to your questions or some kind of voice. We're not really sure how that works, but I've seen and heard enough to know that something bizarre is going on there.
Is there anyone here who wants to communicate with us? Can you tell us your name?
Are you a guest that used to come to Chemong Lodge?
Could you talk to us? We'd love to socialize with you.
Maybe they don't want to socialize with us.
We're just thinking about it.
We're thinking, those 2 hot chicks sitting on the floor of our dining room. This is the room where Doug said he heard the party when he was sitting in his office.
That's right.
The sounds of a party, and when he came here, it got quiet as soon as he came into the room. And what else? People sitting at certain tables. He puts the reserved sign on.
Yeah. Here and on the patio, I think he said. In general, sometimes I get cold.
All right, cold spot.
What
was the guy's name that was? Harry. Harry Wolf?
Don't insult the man.
Is there a Harry Wolf here? Harry, are you there?
We're sorry we laughed at your name.
But come on.
You got a sense of humor, don't
Harry
you?
Wolf? Somebody must have teased you about your name.
So if, was it Doug? Doug was his name.
Mm-hmm.
Heard the party in here.
Mm-hmm.
That would seem more like a residual, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Having like so many people in here.
So many memories. Like, I
Yeah.
think places absorb things like that. You know, I
Mhm.
think every house has every building that's had life in it
Mhm.
absorbs that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, I mean, that could be why nothing's answering us now, because it's not an intelligent haunt.
It's residual.
It's a residual haunt. It's interesting, though, that he would hear the sounds from the office, and then when he came here,
As soon as he came.
it would stop. Because
Yeah.
that, to me, denotes intelligence.
If there's a party going on, we'd love to be invited.
Yeah, we're partiers,
Mm-hmm.
sort of.
Kind of. Sometimes.
We're easily amused.
Yes, definitely easily amused.
Cameron and I decided to tackle the shack. First, that's where Doug said that he spent some time as a youth, a teenager, living there, and he had some paranormal experiences there, mostly sounds, and I think he said he might have been touched. We did some EVP work.
So we're going to ask if there is a spirit here. Please give us a sign. We need a loud, distinct noise. We ask for you to acknowledge us with a rap on the wall.
You know, just spending some time in there. It was very cold, it wasn't heated, so that was making it kind of uncomfortable.
Or if you can speak, we can pick you up on our machines. What we're interested in is your name. Can you please tell us your name?
Unfortunately for us, we got absolutely nothing.
So we're sitting on that porch area. Well, not the porch area. What used to be the porch area. And just outside the dining room. And it's, what time did you say it was? After midnight? Yeah, it's after midnight. That's all we know. The battery just went down to half power.
Really?
Just when I was watching it.
From full, or was it?
From 3/4, it went down to half power. Now that we're sitting down again,
Yeah.
it's not as cold.
Nope. Of course, we were dancing.
We were dancing and singing. I look like I've got a mutton. What is it?
Mullet.
I've got a mutton on my head. A mullet. I don't know. I'm hearing voices.
There's something over here. Come over that way.
I've noticed going that way. I thought it was maybe the guys coming back.
At one point, we heard such a loud noise. We thought the guys were coming in from outside, from their vigils, and we were expecting them to walk through the door.
That's the guys. That's the guys. That's the guys. That's the guys. That's gotta be them.
I sure hope so. Why would they just tap like that, though?
That wasn't a tap. That was like a door opening.
Yeah.
Okay, let's check over here first. What was that?
That was really loud.
That was like someone moving in the other part, right?
Yeah, that was from over there.
Okay, let's go that way.
This way.
Ooh. I thought I heard heard something in here.
It sounded like it was at that door when we got shut. It sounded like that shaking. Like at first I thought it was the guys coming back in. Because I thought it was this
Door.
yeah. It was like no, maybe not.
Okay, let's go back this way. That's you, right?
Yeah, sorry. My bad.
Lead the way. Yeah. That was the floor.
I almost tripped on the cord.
Yeah. Ooh, I'm getting a chill. I'm getting like it feels cold right here. Is there a vent around me? I'm just freezing right now. Ah, okay. Oh, there's a vent. Has it got cold air? I don't feel any cold air coming out of it. Stand right here. I'm freezing.
Yeah, there's a breeze. Because
It's just freezing in here. You find it cold in here?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. Well, earlier when I was walking around, I went back in there by myself, and you guys were all in there. That's when I came back and said that I was feeling a little wonky, remember?
Let's go back there.
It kind of sounded like the sounds from back here somewhere.
Yeah. Little creaky door. Cool.
There's just lots of sounds back here, so...
Coming up on crossing the river. I don't feel scared at all.